Hello, my name is Christian and I would like to present you the newest version of a157b, the alternative software for this wonderful module from Töpfer. I enter a very simple sequence here and I start the sequence and well, now I remove the clock and nothing happens. Isn't it great? So the reason is the software now also has an internal clock. I can show you the internal clock. Shift clock. I see here now the clock menu, and it's also new. Whenever you activate a function and you see mute buttons with this LED here, or pattern buttons with this LED, then it means that this mute or pattern buttons have a special function, a special behavior. For instance, in this case, we have here 4 mute buttons, and these mute buttons then activate like subfunctions. Or another example, I press Shift Effects, and now I see all mute buttons and all pattern buttons have a special behavior. In this case, the mute button select the track, or randomness, or background effects, or you copy this step to the patterns, and this is also a special behavior. In our case, I press Shift, clock, I see here 4 subfunctions. The first subfunction is or are the clock dividers. So you already know them. These are the standard clock dividers for each track. This clock divider, of course, also works with the internal clock. Then the second screen. Here you decide if you would like to work with the internal clock. So int for internal, with both clocks, external and internal, or as before, and this is the default, with the external clock. So we have external, internal, and both clocks. If you use the internal clock, you have here a third subfunction, and with this you can define the beats per minute. So the a157b uses 1 beat or 4 steps. So in this case 120 beats per minute means per second 8 clock signals. You can change this number, of course, pressing, as you know it, here these numbers. So now I have 220 beats per minute, 120 beats per minute. Show you here the difference. Very fast, or just 20 beats per minute. 130, 100. So, for the fourth function here, we need the external clock. The reason is the internal clock is precise, but not calibrated, or not very well calibrated. I just have the processor clock I can use to generate this internal clock, and this processor clock is pretty precise, but not calibrated very well. And so this fourth option here, this fourth subfunction, allows you to calibrate your system. So you give here a clock signal of a very precise clock. In my case it's the Pamela's workout, very precise. And now you see here what the system thinks is the beat per minute of this Pamela's workout. The Pamela's workout in my case is 120, but a157 thinks it's 120.4. So this is not exactly what is the input, and so I have to calibrate it. I do not calibrate Pamela's workout. Pamela's workout is okay, but I have to calibrate this internal processor clock. And for that I have here 2 buttons, down and up. I have 3 buttons, down, up and 0. 0 sets back the calibration, so now the calibration is as a default. And with this up and down, I can now calibrate the internal clock, and I press 4 or 5 times here down, and now you see now the internal clock and the external clock, or the internal processor clock and the external pendulous workhouse clock has the same calibration. So now the internal clock thinks, okay, I receive 120 beats per minute, great, it's okay. I can reset the calibration, no problem, or I can calibrate it again. You do not have to calibrate the internal clock if you just use the internal clock. This is precise enough. I don't think many people would hear the difference between 120 and 120.3 or something like that. But if you work with external devices and external clocks, it may be interesting and also very useful to have exactly the same clock speed, and for that you have this calibration. So this is the biggest change in this release. It's another small change. When you have before deleted the complete system, you used here this delete button, recall, delete. So you see here, delete. And until now, not just the musical informations, but also the system parameter or the MIDI settings were deleted. And now delete just deletes the pattern and other musical information. And if you would like to delete all, also the clock and the system parameters, the MIDI assignment and so on, you have here now a second option, and this is called reset. And with reset, if I press here, the saved slots stays, no problem. But the system parameter of this slot, the active slot, will then be reset. Great, this was a short introduction of this new release. So it has an internal clock. You see now when you activate the function what mute and what pattern buttons have a special function, a special behavior. And finally we have, as before, the possibility to reset the complete pattern with all system parameters and so on. But now we also have a possibility to just delete the steps and, for instance, the track settings, but to keep the system parameters and also, for instance, the MIDI settings, because most of the time we would like to keep this information and reuse it then again. I hope you like this small, well, very, very small release, and I'm happy about your feedback. Thank you.